Hey guys, Survival here. Today I wanted to do a quick review of a couple unique pocket knives that I am personally very fond of. So let's get to it. Here we have two box cutter blade pocket knives which I purchased about 6 years ago. I have regularly used each of them. However, as with all my equipment, I like to take care of them. The first, as you can see here, is this one. I picked this up at a outdoors show several years ago for $10. What I like about this one is, first of all, it's got the usual pocket clip, belt clip, but this one has a benefit that the other doesn't, and that is it's got onboard storage for spare blades. However, do note that the scales are plastic, as is the main boss of it. However, whilst it is plastic on the main body of it, if you look very carefully here, you will actually see that it actually has a metal insert in it. So if I push the blade release and carefully remove the blade, you notice how it's still got some metal there? The plastic simply shields it and helps align the blade a little bit better. It is worth noting that this knife does have a blade lock to lock it in the open position for safety purposes. To release it, simply grab the knife from behind, use your index finger to push this blade release in, gently fold, get your fingers out of the way, and shut the knife. It should be noted that this knife is mostly plastic. However, it has enough bulk to it that it comfortably fits the hand, being a very well-fitting and easy to hold and control safely knife with a little thumb rest here just behind the blade release. However, the thumb rest angles up enough that you cannot accidentally push the blade release far enough to release the blade. This knife here is one I got at my local hardware store. I've had this knife for a few years, and the way you know that this knife is the older knife is also the same reason it's in such good condition, even though it gets used on an almost daily basis. And that is, when they first started producing them, they all came with one of these little pouches. The pouch does have a belt loop on it, and it fits the knife very nicely. However, in terms of spare blades, it comes with this little case of spare blades. It is worth noting that this knife is slimmer and as such cannot have onboard storage for spare blades. However, as with all box cutter pocket knives, because they use box cutter blades, all you have to do is turn the blade around and use the other half of it. This knife does lock open. It is an all metal construction. The stud on the actual blade to push it open does work. I have tightened it from time to time. All you need is the appropriate sized security bit and you can easily tighten it. To swap the blade on this one, simply push this lever up, pull this down, simply lift out, turn your blade over, put it back in, push this guard back up, being careful to not touch the blade, whilst holding your thumb over there. Sometimes this can be a little tricky from odd angles. If you hold it very firmly, push this lever down, making sure that this detent latches into that hole without pushing it down. You see how I just pushed it down? Hold it firmly, hold it in, push it down, lock it in. That blade will not go anywhere. This knife, being slimmer, does, however, not fit the hand quite as well as the more plasticky one. However, this knife is significantly more durable overall, a lot slimmer, more compact, even with its pouch. The blade lock is a very solid, strong blade lock. Simply hold the blade arm, push the release, move it just a little bit so that it's unlocked, grab the back of the knife, turn it over, and close it, ensuring that you keep your fingers out of the way so you don't cut yourself. Here at Assessed Bushcraft and Survival, we always focus and prioritise safety as our number one concern. Even if it takes you 1 or 2 seconds longer, it's better to be safe than it is to not. The knife comfortably fits the pouch that came with, remaining compact and effective. However, it is worth noting that if you want to carry spare blades, you also have to carry this, which came with it, which holds spare blades, fresh on one side, used on the other. Personally, when it comes to physical ergonomics, I prefer the ergonomics of this cheaper pocket knife. However, I do prefer the much more rugged, stronger, better construction of the other one. One of the things that I do like about this one is the onboard blade storage. Sometimes I'll be cutting something such as a cardboard box that something like a computer server might have arrived in. The type of cardboard that those boxes are made of blunts these blades fairly quickly. So even with the ability to simply turn the blade around and use the other half, I can blunt a blade very quickly. As such, being able to have other blades on board at the ready is extremely beneficial. That said, if I want a good, rugged, I don't have to worry about it getting broken, box cutter blade pocket knife that's easy to open, I cannot fault this one. Both of these have been used for at least 5 to 6 years on almost a daily basis. Like with all tools, I highly recommend that you take good care of them. If you treat your tools right, you don't throw them around, you don't abuse them, but you use them, then those tools will last, they will serve you well, and you'll be able to get the most possible life out of them, giving you the best value for money. Even this cheaper knife has held up to regular use purely because I don't abuse it. I use it for what it's for. I don't use either of them as a hammer or a little small scale batoning device. I use them as what they are, knives. The other thing that I like about these is common to both of these knives. This part of the actual blade holder acts as a depth stop, ensuring that the blade doesn't protrude beyond safe limits into most boxes, and it also holds it like a standard box cutter at the most effective angle to use the knife in most cases. As you can see here, we have the same thing, just at a slightly different angle. One thing that I would like to point out is, and this is just my personal preference, I personally find the blade locking mechanism on this knife to be more troublesome and less user-friendly than I do on this knife. As you can see, on a side-by-side comparison, there are fewer moving parts on this cheaper knife, and swapping a blade is a lot simpler. It's a single-step operation. On this knife, you simply hold the blade carefully, avoiding cutting yourself, push this red button in all the way, pull the blade out. If you have only used half the blade, turn it around and put it back in, keeping the red part held down, or if the blade is completely blunt, grab a new blade, ensure the red button is pushed down, line it up, push it in all the way, let go, give it a gentle wiggle to make sure it's locked, and it's swapped. Whereas on this all metal constructed knife, you must release this guard, pull this flap down, carefully lift the blade out. It does have, if you look very carefully here, two little alignment notches which meet up with the profile on the top of the blade. However, why I'm not so fond of this method is, once I put the blade in, I've got to push up on this cover, I've got to hold it very firmly. I usually keep my thumb partially over that hole to start it, pull the lever down, keeping upwards pressure the entire time, push it into place until the detent gets in the hole and holds it down. It's a slower, more involved method, and it has more moving parts, which leads to more potential points of failure, as if the little pin that is just visible there fails, that whole side comes off and it won't hold blades. Whereas this cheaper knife, by simply using effectively a rocker arm, which if I push that down, do you see how this little bit has popped up? That is simply a spring-loaded rocker arm which locks into one of these holes, holding the blade into an otherwise solid holder. And if you need to tighten the actual blade where it pivots, simply use a Torx bit and you can tighten the main screw. One of the reasons that I recommend everyone have at least one box cutter blade pocket knife is most good pocket knives will cost quite a bit of money. Then you've got to keep focusing on sharpening them, which also may mean purchasing sharpening equipment if you don't already own it. Whereas if you have a box cutter blade pocket knife, you have the benefit that all you need to do every time it gets blunt is pull the blade out, flip it over, use the other half. When the entire blade is blunt, simply dispose of it, and get a new blade. Box cutter blades are plentiful, highly affordable, and razor sharp when they're brand new. Being metal, box cutter blades are recyclable, so do keep that in mind. So if you don't already have a box cutter blade pocket knife, I highly recommend that you consider adding one to your kit. However, I would say have a look at all the various ones available in your area. Pick the one that you think is the most comfortable, practical, and easiest to change the blade on. And remember, stay safe in the bush.